ahead and
Don't push any buttons.
All right, I'd like to welcome everybody to the Tidewater Woodworkers Guild Meeting. Yep, let me turn around. Oh, that ball right there. Okay. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody. And let's see, can everybody hear me? Yep. Okay. Well, I'm going to just jump right into introducing Jim Francis, who's going to talk to us tonight about a few different topics. And that's about all really.
All right, thanks.
Thank you. Oops.
Oh, okay. We're going to go ahead and record this this session, and so if you want to view it at any time in the future, you're more than welcome to. Anyway, three different quick topics tonight. The first one is about Dick Pernicke, a yahoo from Iowa that ended up in Alaska, and his door hinges, and then talk a little bit about a scraper that you probably got hidden away in your shop drawer somewhere that may be of use in more fine woodworking. And then the third thing is I finally finished the Jonathan Shoemaker chair with Ray Jernigan, and I just have I'll show it to you and have a couple comments with regard to the construction and carving. But anyway, do we have the slides, Terry? Yeah, let's go ahead and show the slides. Anyway, Dick Pernicke, and this is one of the books that include some of his entries in the journal. It's called One Man's Wilderness, and it's by Sam Keith. And anyway, Ray Jernigan, during the class, he mentioned about Dick Pernicke, and so I looked him up, and pretty fascinating fellow. He was born in 1917 in Primrose, Iowa, which is southeastern corner, not too far from the Mississippi River. And of course, as you might imagine, being born in 1917, he served in the Navy during World War II as a carpenter. And then he migrated up to Alaska around Kodiak and worked as a diesel mechanic and heavy equipment operator. Well, when he turned 50, he said, well, it's enough of this working world. He decided to retire and migrate to the Twin Lakes region of Alaska, which is about 140 miles south and a little bit west of Anchorage. And if you can see my pointer, if I can find my pointer, it's this area right in here. And you can only get to it by float plane. Anyway, he had a friend that had a cabin on Twin Lakes, and so Dick Pernicke went up there in 1966 and scoured out his spot, cut all the logs for his cabin and skinned them, and then left for the winter. And then the next year when he came back, he went ahead and built his cabin all that summer and then wintered over. And what's amazing, he's lived in that cabin from the time he built it for about another 30 years. And so that's pretty much where he lived. And he was a very good photographer and video cameraman. And so you'll see in the book and the videos that are there, just amazing scenes of the wildlife and the scenery. So anyway, just a little bit about his cabin, and then we'll talk about his hinges. Anyway, this is Dick working on his cabin, and as you might imagine, it's only 11 by 17 in size. And so this was probably late July, August of 1967 that he was at this point. And he finished it up, and you can see him peeking out his front door there. But anyway, the thing that intrigued me, and you could tell that he was very talented, being trained as a carpenter in the Navy, he knew how to sharpen his handsaw, and he knew how to sharpen his double-bitted axe and his adze and his chisels and whatnot, because he wouldn't have gotten to this point in that summer without those capabilities. But anyway, you see him, it's sort of humorous. You see him standing in his doorway, and he's got a little block plane in his hand, and his adjustable square is over here, and he's got a draw knife hanging up there, and so he had certainly accomplished, and that's a pretty nice looking door. Okay, this is what it looks like now in the wintertime. And what he did for the, interesting, he had the roof, and he had a layer of polyethylene sheeting that he had flown in, and then he put moss on top of that. And so that was his protection from the snow and the rain and whatnot. Another picture of him there. And the first winter that he stayed there was a good check on how tight his cabin was. Because at 30 below zero, it was easy to pick up where there were leaks. And so he had to go around and fix those leaks as the winter went on. And then, of course, spring and summer come very quickly and pass just as quickly. And anyway, this is a picture from Twin Lake looking back toward his cabin. And off to the right here is his storehouse. And he kept it up on stilts just to keep the grizzly bears out. And then the workshop is behind the cabin. The workshop and the outhouse and storage shed are behind the cabin. And you'll see them in this picture right here. Here's the outhouse. Here's the woodshed, and also storage. But it's the one thing I thought interesting is another picture of one of his workbenches, and you can see his rationale as to why he's got those pegs in there. Is, a long log would certainly stay on top there, but as the log got shorter and shorter, you had to have these pegs sticking up there. So that was pretty interesting. And here he is hard at work. And he cut every single one of the logs that went into his cabin. And then with that saw there, he did a lot of ripping and a lot of cutting to make it happen. And then this last picture is inside the cabin. And all the furniture inside he built. And so what you've got is you've got a bunk bed here in case you got visitors. And I don't know what he did if there were 3 or more. I imagine someone had to sleep on the floor. And the floor was gravel. To put the foundation in for his cabin, he grubbed out an area, bigger than 11 by 17, and then carted up from the lake to gravel. And it was fairly small size, and he spread it and tamped it down, and that was his footing for the logs in the cabin. And so that worked out pretty well. So he's got a little dresser right there. Of course, his table and chairs, all handmade, no furniture from Italy coming in. And then he had a fireplace at the far end, and he also had a wood stove, which is over here. So anyway, a pretty remarkable person. And but like I said, what intrigued me were his door hinges. I mean, they're just really very robust, but elegant. So anyway, this may come under the theme of much too much time in the shop, but I said, I'd like to go ahead and make a set of hinges just to see if maybe that was the process he used. And I think he made them out of separate pieces of wood just because of the size of the knobs on the hinge here. But I decided to go ahead and that's it for my PowerPoint slides, Terry. So let me shut this down here a second. So anyway, I decided, well, let me just get a chunk of wood and make a hinge out of one piece. And so this is what it looks like. And you know, I used a 3/8 inch dowel. And the key part of this is the layout. The rest of it's pretty straightforward. And you can see in the picture, as far as clearances, you know, this inside edge of this part of the hinge is what's going to be closest to the barrel, if you want to call it. So you've got to have enough clearance. Everything else is, you can be pretty liberal. So anyway, this is what the end product looks like. And you're probably saying to yourself, there's no way I'm building a door and making hinges. Well, you know, what this opens up for is a possibility is a garden gate, you know, a rustic garden gate, you know, make a set of hinges for it. And I think you'd find out that they'd be a pretty robust set. So anyway, this is just a piece of redwood. And so the first thing you've got to do is to lay this thing out is just mark your center line down along the width so that each part of your hinge is equal thickness. And then go ahead and lay out your circle for the barrel. And once you've got that done, go ahead and drill your hole for your pin. And like I said, I used a 3/8 inch pin, and it could be, you could go bigger, 1/2 inch, but I think you'd want to leave enough material in the barrel, you know, that it would be a fairly sturdy hinge. The next thing that, after you got it laid out, is your memory device, which is a colored pencil. You got to remember that, okay, on one side, this is going to be the center pin, or the center part of your hinge, right here. And on this side, this is going to be the outside. Now, typically, this side of the hinge gets attached to the structure because it's got the two lips on it. We'll call it that. And this one here would be on your door or gate, and it would have the single lip on it. Okay, so the next thing you do is you'd go ahead and rip it down until you hit your circle. And then you'd go ahead and take 2 cuts here for each of your, to establish your lips. Okay, and then that's where the real fun starts. And it goes pretty quickly. And the lesson to this is that, you know, to be efficient, you really have to have sharp tools. And just like in his cabin, you know, it could have taken him forever. I mean, he could have analyzed it with a dull saw and a dull axe and whatnot, but sharp tools make all the difference in the world, and that you move your concentration away from the tool to what you're actually supposed to be doing. Okay, so having said that, the first thing that we want to do with you can use a rasp, you can use a chisel, you can use whatever. What we want to do is we want to make the round over so that when this part of the hinge comes up, you know, it doesn't foul. And so we'll make that real quick. And life goes easy when your tools are sharp. And the technique that is good to use is just a slice. So if you're a golfer and you do a lot of slicing, then you should be a pretty good woodworker, because that's what we're looking for. Okay. We want to go quite a bit. We want to make this look as round as possible, and it's pretty easy with slicing cuts. So this is our token sawdust for. Okay, and then we want to flip this thing over. And the other thing that we want to do is make the center lip, let's call it that, round on both the outside and inside, because this is what's going to rotate and foul with the rest of the lip if you don't take care of that. And it goes pretty quick. And again, okay. And then we've got, then the next thing we're doing is we're going to cut the recesses on each side. And so since we've already ripped this board down to the circle, now all we're doing is just freeing up those 3 lips so the thing can rotate. So the best thing to do is just make it quick. And the thing to recognize is that down here at the bottom of this piece of the hinge, that's the closest to where you're going to be to the barrel. So you need to allow a little bit of room so that you can make that turn. Because if not, then it'll get real tight. Now, as far as the robustness of the hinge, it really comes from the clearance between the structure part of the hinge and the one that's on the door. And what I did on this one is that I took a tablet with the plastic covers on it, and I cut out 2 washers, and that was just enough that it took out all the slop between the structure part of the hinge and the door part of the hinge. So each of those washers were probably a fat 30/2 of an inch, something like that. Now for viewers, this is the time to get up and go to the refrigerator, get a beer, then come back. But be quick about it. Okay, that's pretty good. Now we can use a saw on this side because we have to make a cut from each edge. So we can cut halfway with the saw, and so we'll do that. And I'll try not to mark up the vise here. Oops. This was a whole lot more exciting when I was in the shop by myself talking to myself. It almost, being out here, it's almost like listening to a presidential speech. I am so glad that you're here tonight, Corey. How's your son doing? All right.
Pretty impressive set of doctors we've got here.
Now the other thing that you can do is using the toe of your saw. You can get down there a little bit further too to help get things cleaned out.
So Jim, if you were in your shop, would there be other tools that you would use besides just the one chisel?
No, huh? Well, yeah, there would be. My pocket knife. And so you can clean out and you can get down deeper. And you work your way, you know, it takes a little bit of time, but you can work your way down there. And the nice thing about the alignment on this hinge, making it out of one board, is that you drill your hole for your pin to begin with. And then you can put your pin in, and then the rest is just, you know, academic. You can get things cleaned up and out of there. And the alignment is all taken care of. Okay. Now, in Dick's diary, he mentioned that for his hinges, he liked to use the stumps of trees. And I think the reason for that is he was looking for as close-grained wood as he could possibly find. And the only wrinkle to that is, you know, even though he was using spruce, and in fact, his whole cabin was built of spruce, and you know, you might have a tendency to have some parts of that stump, you know, fairly gnarly and hard to work. And so I'll give it a couple more whacks here, and then we'll call it good. And especially since I've got that completed piece already there. Now, would you want to use a wooden hinge for, say, a piece of furniture? I guess a person could do that, depending upon what kind of style they're looking at. But you know, it might be something to certainly ponder. Close, 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 close.
Wouldn't the hardwood be better for something like that, or would it make any difference?
You know, the pin in this hinge doesn't rotate. You know, I've got it lubricated with wax, and but I think your suggestion is very good, because I'd rather replace the pin than the hinge, and so that would mean that you'd want your pin to be a little bit softer than the rest of your hinge. And so if you used a hardwood for your hinge and something a little bit softer for your pin, then, you know, I think that would reduce your maintenance a little bit. But anyway, so we're about ready to break through, but I'm not going to spend any more time on that, because what you can see is this is the end product. And you can see on this edge right here, my clearance is much bigger than what I'd really like it to be, but it's not detrimental to the strength of the hinge. And this is the clearance that you've got to have between the hinge and the barrel right there. And so, you know, it's just sort of an interesting kind of thing that would be an accent piece for your garden gate if you wanted. So anyway, any questions there? Okay. We're going to build up to the climax. You know, so that was just to get you warmed up. The second thing I wanted to talk about is that, you know, there's been a lot of discussion over the years with regard to scrapers. You know, how to properly sharpen a card scraper, and how to use a scraper, and how to use a Stanley 80 scraper and things like that. Well, another scraper that a person can use is probably buried somewhere deep in your shop drawer, and it's the Rodney Dangerfield paint scraper. And this is the guy right here that I'm talking about. You know, this is the $5 Ace Hardware paint scraper. But properly sharpened, it can do a very nice job on rough lumber. And the key thing here is you don't need a burr on it. Just get a nice sharp edge, make sure the back is flat, so it's sharp, and just go to town. I had occasion to use this in that the grandkids were making cutting boards for their moms for Mother's Day. And so we did the glue up of the pieces and whatnot. And of course, the first step after you do the glue up and everything dries is you got to clean all that glue that seeped out off of the board and get it ready to sand, which is, and so what I did was just use this scraper. And so you just put some pressure down here. And if you're going with the wood, the grain of the wood, you can remove quite a bit of material. And you can feel where you're grabbing, where you're actually grabbing. And so you can take care of quite a bit of that, even without using a card scraper or Stanley 80 or things like that. And so it really goes pretty quick, pretty durable because the blades are essentially spring steel, easy to sharpen. And so you can get quite a bit of stuff off of them. And you'll get sawdust, but then you'll also get shavings that would say that you're doing a decent job of scraping on that. So anyway, that's the 5-second spiel on scrapers. And I think you can use it. The key thing that two key things that you want to watch for is if you're cleaning up a resaw job, like on the inside of this hinge, where you got lines that are perpendicular to the run of the wood, what you want to do is you want to angle your scraper so you average out those heels and take them off, as opposed to going parallel to those ridges and your scraper would go up and down. So what you want to do is angle your cut so you take those off, as opposed to continuing with the ridges. The other thing is, don't go off onto one corner or the other, and if you do that, then you've created another gouge that you have to get rid of. Okay. So the third thing is just a couple comments on the Jonathan Shoemaker chair. In April, we had the SAFM meeting that everyone in the guild were invited to, where Ray Jernigan showed you the process of the design and construction of the chair. And so I finished the chair this past weekend. And so, no, that's fine. Thanks, Chris. Anyway, so this is what it looks like. It was interesting in that this was the first project with so much carving to it. The volume of carving was quite a bit. And the first thing that I came to realize is that you've got to have absolutely sharp carving tools. Again, because if you do, then your mind moves from all shits is what happens, what broke out because my tool was dull, to, okay, what is the design, what's the carving supposed to do, and how do I get there? and the technique of making it happen. So those were that was probably the key thing. The second thing is that on this low relief carving, there's still a fair amount of background that you have to remove. And so it's like, it's almost like plumbing or painting. I mean, it's just, you just think up all sorts of excuses why you don't want to do it. So it's like that, in that you just have to stop whining and get it done. And so those were the two big things. But anyway, so it's sort of an interesting chair, and I put this is mahogany, and I put a coat of boiled linseed oil on it, and it's been about 3 days since I put the oil on there. And with the mahogany, it just kept getting darker and darker, and so it'll get even more dark than what you see right here. I did have some variation in color between the side and the front rails and the rest of the chair. So I used the General Finishes candlelight stain to even that out a little bit. And the candlelight stain is a brown with a hint of red. So it did a pretty decent job of making things a bit more uniform. I'm going to let this dry for a couple more days while I build the slip seat and get it upholstered. And then what I'll do is put a couple coats of the General Finishes oil urethane on it, and then do the glazing with a dark brown to highlight more of the creases and marks on the carving, and then seal it and finish it up with a couple more coats of the varnish. So anyway, that's what the chair looks like. So anyway, the last point is, I think we've really got a great resource of Ray Jernigan teaching classes here at the Guild. And so if you ever have an opportunity to take any of his classes, you should do that. He's just tremendously organized, very patient, so a very, very good instructor. So, questions?
And Jim, can you talk about the hooting and reading on the styles of the chair?
Yeah, that was an issue that Ray had to work through, Scott, and that he was looking for what's an efficient method to make those happen. Some people would use routers or other methods, and he talked to Alan Breed and a couple Terry or Kupalak and a couple other people, and they pretty much came up with the conclusion, well, you got to carve them. And the wrinkle is that you've got 3 of these flutes and reeds here, and your style tapers as it goes up. And so what you have to do is ensure that, so the width of the reed and the flute tapers gets a little bit smaller as it goes up. And there's a method that Ray showed to make that happen. What I did in my analyzing, you can make a jig and it would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pins in it. And it's just like a centering stick, okay? So, and I use finishing nails to make those, put those pins in. What I did is I started down here and used this as my reference. So I said, take for example, 3/16, a 3/16 plus 32nd for the first reed, 3/16 for the space, 3/16 plus a 32nd for the second reed, your space, and then your third reed, and then your space. And so that's where I put my pins on my stick. Well, and then I had 2 shoulders on my pin. Let's say that this is This is my jig, okay, and I've got two shoulders on there. Well, as I come up the stile, I keep those shoulders in line, touching the edge of the stile. And even though they're rotating, I'm getting the same ratio of distance between the reeds and the flutes all the way across. And so that's one way that you can do it. And it worked out pretty well.
You just gotta watch your layouts, right? As you're going.
Yeah. You can't be drinking when you're doing this. And so it worked out pretty well. And I guess the only wrinkle was here up at the top is that, this wasn't finished up at the top. I had extra material. So I had to stop at some point, and then after I got this all cleaned up, then I finalized the reeds going up to the top and called it good. So anyway. Any other questions? Okay. Scott, you want to talk about your chest? Or your drawers? Or your chest?
Okay, so I made, you can see in the back, I made campaign chest lenses from Campaign Furniture by Chris Schwartz. Now, this looks great. It looks amazing. It's fun, but it's a pain in the ass. Let me pull forward. Can you all hear me okay?
Yeah, we sure can.
So this is made out of peeling. These boards are 16-inch wide, 16 or 18-inch wide is the top. I got a river front on the sides from here to here to here. Okay. And we've got a traditional drawer. Now, while I'm taking this out, there's a lot of brass on this. If you're going to build this project, the brass is in the hundreds. So that's why it's a pain in the butt. Why it's called a camping chest is take it apart.
Throw that in your backpack.
So I have the handles that I have on the front, on the side. I really don't want to put all the weight on 3 screws. The author's book had just a traditional brass handle here. I just didn't like the look of it, so I wanted handles that matched everything else, as in the front here. So we got a dowel that just these are just measuring pegs, they're just dowels. Now on the bottom, let's see if this looks out pretty good. So all the feet are turned on a lathe, and I tapped a very large dowel, put it in the center, so you can unscrew the feet and put them in for storage. The historical design of a campaign chest was used primarily by the British military. They would use it as their travel furniture. Now, when I get it up in my bedroom, it's not going anywhere after this. So, in that sense, I don't really need a campaign chest. It just looks neat. And I started this project nearly 1 year ago. It was May of 2019. So, the finish is, it's got one I sort of gave up after I got the outside surface done. So after I got the outside surface flat and true, the inside surface was just being a pain in the butt, and I sort of gave up after about a 16th inch away where I should have been. So the outside carcass came up pretty good. The inside carcass was a little bit more finicky to fit the drawers in. Some of my drawers, they're sort of trapezoidal or rhomboid, and every little drawer had to be, it's just not perfectly square. So if I did it again, you gotta do the drawers though, flatten them out the old-fashioned way, but you just really gotta work on making sure everything is flat as perfectly possible. So that's my campaign chest. I'm really glad it's done. And does anyone have any questions?
What's your next project, Scott?
It's big screen. Yeah. Any other questions?
That looks awesome.
Great.
Yeah, that looks really nice.
Yeah. Thanks for the opportunity to share it. Now, I do have a question for anyone in there. How do you guys prevent racking in drawers?
By racking, you mean like when you're trying to put it in to keep it from binding up?
Yes.
Tour guide.
What I've done on the inside of these, the only non-traditional thing in here is I have low friction tape on the inside. That's my drawer glide. Is I put some low friction tape in so it cannot move easy.
Oh, so I think he's talking more sticking as he's going in and out.
Yeah. So the racking. I don't know. Can you hear me? Okay, Scott. Okay. So from a you're good. I think the webcam is picking it up. Geometrically, you want something long and skinny as opposed to wide and short in the direction you're trying to travel. That's why a lot of times you'll see some of the older wood drawers will have a single track down the middle. So from a mathematical friction standpoint, as soon as you get really wide with your constraints, you'll get that binding because it has a diagonal aspect to it. If you go, if you can create a track, so to speak, as opposed to just trying to go in through the sides, you'll have less binding.
All right, thank you.
That's theoretical.
No, I actually saw a drawer like that recently, and I was wondering how the drawer was so smooth, and they just had this center rail in the middle.
Yeah, that'll keep it from racking.
All right. Great, your turn.
I don't have anything else. I don't have anything.
So guys, this goof up on the link is totally my fault. It looks like I have I do have a question. Were you on the other one and we weren't on it? Or did that link just simply not work? The one that was sent out last week or earlier over the weekend.
It didn't work.
Okay, I'm not sure what happened there. I should have double checked that, and in the future I will double check it before the meeting. I'll launch it well ahead to give you guys a heads up. Huge apologies there. It's supposed to be, anyways, it was supposed to go better. And my cameraography, whatever you call it, videography was not great tonight. Sorry about that too. I'm still getting used to the new systems.
It was pretty cool. I like that. That was awesome.
Thanks. Any suggestions for any of this, please let me know. And you know, I said it last time and I probably didn't follow up, but if anybody wants a link to Ray's presentation from, you know, a month ago or so, I can get you a link to see it, you know, and you can skim through it or whatever. I think it was about, what, 90 minutes?
Yeah, about 90 minutes.
I'd be interested, yeah.
So just send me an email, Terry@Ninaverse.net. It's NIE. Well, anyways, I think let Fran or somebody know, and they can send me an email. And I'm putting it in the chat, but I know it's a pretty limited group of people here. Any other suggestions for any of this, please let me know. We're lonely here. We're hoping people come back next month. This chair is a lot more beautiful in person than the camera makes it. Any comments about next month's presentations, or do you have something on tap
We
already?
do not have anything on ideas of what the presentation will be, yeah.
I think I committed to you to have something on you know, a topic of laser engraving.
There you go.
That would be great. Would you be ready for that?
I'll do my best. I think I can have something.
Okay, you're on.
Now, to complement that, we could do barbecue and coleslaw.
There you go.
That'd be an excellent idea.
I think that would be a nice draw.
I think I see Mike's eyes opening up a little bit more. No response.
Anyways, that's all I've got.
Okay. Thank you very much, Terry, for all you're doing.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
I'll see how this turned out with the recording, and maybe we can post that too if it worked. I'm still getting used to that. Thanks,
Yeah.
Jim. That was a very nice
I like that
presentation.
overhead camera. You can come down and you can show both. One is faster than the other one, though.
Yeah, there's
There's a delay.
probably a sync delay.
Yeah.
I can probably tune that if I really needed to, but let's see if I can get.
He was finished on one of them before he was finished with the other one.
So this is kind of what we're doing for the boom now. So you can sort of see what's. I just put it in over what he wants to, or what he's doing on the table, but it's a little clunky in terms of the pan and tilt. So it's kind of all on or all off. But we're playing. It's part of the craft now. Okay, well that's all I've got. I guess
That's
I'll
it.
tune out.
All right. Thanks, Terry. See you guys.
All right. That's it?
There you guys. Thanks for the meeting. It's off.
I didn't understand you.
Good luck, Corey.
Recording stopped.
Okay.